Hello everybody, welcome to Inside Zambezi, where we discuss on issues relating to gender-based violence, HIV, as well as sexual and reproductive health rights. Please subscribe to our channel and like for more content like this. Today we are at the Katima Mulilo UNAM campus, where we are going to have a better understanding on how mental health relates to gender-based violence. Welcome to the second part of the video, where we are now going to look at how mental health contributes to violent behavior. So doctor, I think when I was introducing the second part of the video, I gave a glimpse of what the second part of the video is all about. So just try to take us more into detail. How does mental health disorder influence violent behavior?
Right. Thank you for the question. Yeah, let me use the two concepts here. There is this misunderstanding that mental health causes gender-based violence. It does not cause it. However, we use the word an association. There is an association between gender-based violence and someone's state of the state of his mind. They are not necessarily a causal effect, but they are associated. I think you understand what I mean by that. Why is it, let me just clarify that. If it would be causal, it would be that whoever would be suffering from a mental health would naturally be, could also be a perpetrator of gender violence. No. But when we say it is associated, means if you are not mentally well, there are chances that you could also be engaged in the gender-based violence. So that is the relationship. There is a relationship. Okay. There is a relationship. Okay. Yes.
Okay, quite interesting. So what are the patterns of gender-based violence that are associated to mental health?
The most common patterns are, like we mentioned, is anxiety. People who are very anxious. Because when you are anxious, you are out of your mind, you are out of control of your mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do something which we call you do something desperate things. It is not only anxiety, we also talk of depression. Mm-hmm. Yeah, people, if you, for some reason, though you cannot just diagnose by mere looking at people. People are, as human beings, we tend to make those labels. You look at him and say, or look at Ryan, the way he looked at me, that one, he must be a schizophrenic, the way he was. No, we weren't using those labels. But it's safer rather to say he looked different. You would rather see what you rather use the words which you have seen. To avoid concepts of depression, anxiety, PTSD, which is, you remember I mentioned it stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, those are very close states of mind which can easily lead someone or maximize the chance of someone to be engaged in gender-based violence. Not only that, there is another problem which could not necessarily be to kill someone. Even suicide by itself. People with those symptoms, with those issues, are capable or they are potential candidates of being suicidal. Yeah, because there are those who, if you say you are depressed, you are suffering mentally, and you think sometimes, I am a burden to my family, I am a burden to that one, I am a burden to someone. I don't want someone to be the world is like this because of me, because of my presence. The solution to that is to kill myself. There is a relationship to that. There are those who, because of their mental health, they think even the treatment they are receiving is too much, so it can bring to another violence, which is not necessarily gender violence. We call it suicide. Suicide is not gender-based violence, but it is violence.
Okay, so while we're still at that, can you also just bring in some more understanding on how does violence affect mental health? Violent behavior, how does it affect mental health?
It's the reverse. It can be it's the reciprocal. You're right. Yeah, because of violence, because of G, they like giving the acronym for it, GBV. Shall I be using that?
Yes.
Yeah. The GBV can also have an effect on someone's mental health. One, it can be in the form of either you are the perpetrator of it or the victim of it. Either way, it can lead someone to a mental state, illness of the mind. For instance, someone who is a victim, you have been a victim of this violence, you can develop things like trauma, you can be traumatized by that, you can be, sometimes you sustain a physical injury which can translate into a mental illness. Each time you look at your own injury which came out of that violence, that's part of on the victim. On the other side is the perpetrator. Sometimes even if you are that violent, you are a human being to start with. There are times when your senses come back to you, and you even feel bad. You are remorseful of what you've done. The same could also it could have an effect over you. You feel bad and you cannot retract it. You know, that person is in that state because of what I've done. You have been the perpetrator of violence, but now because you cannot withdraw it, you cannot retract it. So what happens now? You start. You have this sense of guilt. You pain. You feel responsible for that, and that can lead to stress, depression. I hope you see the link here. So it's both ways. GBV has an effect both on the victim and on the perpetrator in terms of their mental health. Yes.
Okay. It's quite interesting how we keep getting the full picture as we deliberate on these matters, because when we were looking at mental health, we understood what mental health was, but now we're bringing in a different component, which is violence, and the relationship between these two has been stated by you. So can you also just explain to us what is the cycle of emotional abuse?
There are a lot of sciences, there are a lot of theories and assumptions on that. Others will tell you there are about 4 cycles or 4 stages. Others will tell you there are 3 main ones. For me, I would say there are 6. Yeah, the cycles, how it moves, especially when you look it from the perpetrator side. Yeah, it starts with what we call the setup stage. That's stage number 1. And on the setup stage, that's where a person plans, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to commit this crime. So they will not call it a crime. They say, I want to, like we say, I'll show him. I'll show him. How can you do this to me? Because, and remember, this is when someone is no longer in his right state of mind. Yeah, so they will do things in the sense or with the understanding that when I've done this, then I'll have peace with myself. If I can gush the blood from this person, then I'll have peace with myself. That stage, we call it the planning stage. They have not done it yet. I call it the first stage of the cycle, and I call it the setup stage. The second stage is what we call the abuse stage. This is where you implement what you've been planning. You wanted to, whatever traps you have laid, you do it. Whether you want to apply it using your fist or using whatever tool you have, or maybe others sometimes it's just verbal. Remember, this violence can also come in different form. Yeah, there are those who are verbally violent, and it could also have almost a similar effect on someone. There are those who say, I will not touch you. I will not touch you, but I will show you. So violence, sometimes people reduce it to physical infliction, but it can also be part, yes, it's physical, but it's also emotional and also mental, because you inflict that pain to the mind of someone. Okay, whatever it is, When you apply what you planned, that will be the second stage of the cycle, which I call the abuse stage. Then the third one will be, like I've said in the past, in the beginning rather, even if he's a perpetrator of violence, he's a human being. After he's done the act, then he switches in the state which we call, from our field, we call it the state of feeling guilt. He says, sure, I have done it. Why did I do this? Remember, sometimes you do not necessarily have to be have a mental illness for you to be a violent person, because sometimes, and these are the people who go through that cycle, because they are in the right state of the mind. It's only that when they acted, maybe they were just too much emotional, whatever it is. But in the steps, in terms of the stages, they will come that third stage with it, the state of feeling guilty. You wish I could not have done this, but it is already, the act is already done. Then that will actually lead you to a fourth stage, which I call the abuser's fear of retaliation. Because of what I've done, what are the repercussions? What are the payback? How do I pay? I can be arrested. I can, I'm no longer safe. Allow me also to digress a bit on this concept of the perpetrators of GBVs. The majority of these people are people who are the product of what we call the bullies. And now behind the bully is what we call cowardice. Bullies, the majority of bullies are people who are not brave. They put on this mask. Deep down he is empty, he is weak. So how does he advance how does he want to make his personality known? So he puts in the form of a bully, consciously or unconsciously. Now, when they do that, then they act, they do things beyond their own control. They want to be so, they are actually creating a psychological space. Yeah, that's why when the bully reached to the victim, he will come with everything, rough and all of those things. But deep down, this person, if you would find a way, it's like a balloon. When the balloon is full of, or a ball is full of air, it looks big, but just punch it. That is the bully. But if you don't do that, he can get his way. No, but then I say, I'm still on the third and the fourth stage, where that perpetrator of violence, the fear of retaliation, say, no, yes, I've done it. I'm feeling, but now what will people say? What are the consequences of what I've done? Then the fifth stage is rationalization. You try to make sense of, oh, okay, anyway, I could have done it, but what else could I have done? I could have done. You try to make reason with what you have done. That's the fifth. Then the last stage, which is the final stage out of my own sixth understanding of the cycle, is what you shift on to what we call non-abusive or charming behavior. Because of now you want to undo what you have done. And that's why for those people who, for instance, if he did something, he committed a crime, whatever form of crime, and is taken to prison, when they come out of prison, they become too much good to be true. They reach this stage, the sixth stage, because they feel that now they owe it to the society. So they have to find a way of trying to be as good as you are. Even say, people can change. This one, people. Allow me to go, for instance, allow me to use the example of the Bible, of Saul and Paul. You know, when Saul was still Saul, he persecuted Christians, but when he was converted, it was him who was now being persecuted. So that is a typical example from a biblical point of view, but it also happens in our own lives. Someone who was the perpetrator can even become a victim because of the remorseless action people are against. Others might not even accept him, saying he's not genuine. But later they discover, no, he's the real gentleman. So that is the fifth and the last stage of the cycle.
Okay. You know, it's quite interesting because these are very common traits we've seen in our communities. For example, husband beats wife, and then after some time, after the reconciliation has taken place,
a wife beating husband.
yes, after they have reconciled, and then you now see the perpetrator going an extra mile to try and comfort the victim of
That's the
violence.
sixth stage.
Yes, the sixth stage. Okay, it's very important for us to have such information. Number one, for us to be able to regulate our own advancements to others, because we could be perpetrators in different ways, because we might not know that we're actually committing or we are advancing ourselves in a manner that the other person does not accommodate. So, what is the effect of violence to an individual, to the family, as well as to the community?
Yeah, there's a downside to, there's a price to pay, yeah, on the individual level, and also on the family level, and it's down to the level of the family, and community rather. From the individual perspective, we already mentioned that you are already attracting things like stress on yourself, yeah, because of what you have done. I'm talking to the perpetrator, yeah. Once it has happened, it's going to be very bad for him. He wishes he would have removed it. He will go through those 6 stages. That's an effect to the perpetrator. But to the victim, it's even worse. This is where you find a child, especially among children, they will develop some disorders, sleeping disorders, eating disorders, because they are being victimized every day. They are being, let me take it on the level of a child. When there's violence at home between the father and the mother, the child is not just only a mere spectator. No, he is part, or she is part of that. How? Because the effect of what's happening there has a serious psychological effect on the child. There are children who develop some mental disorders. Why? Because of their limited understanding of the situation of how is my father and my mother fighting that way. There is a tendency, there is a possibility of the child saying, were they fighting like this even when I was not born? Or is it because of my presence? And unknowingly from both sides, the child can lapse into stress, lapse into depression because of the violence which is happening between the parents. That's one part of it. Or the other way around, it could be that if the child himself is the victim directly, either from the mother or from the father, it still comes to the point of saying, in most cases they will talk of regretting. I was not supposed to be here. Okay, I made myself available. Yeah, it's my fault. That's why I'm like this. So it has a serious effect on the individual. That is the one, the first part of the question. The second part, you said on the family. It's a very traumatic thing. When there is violence in the family, there will be this problem or strained interpersonal relationships. Where you find the father does not speak to the mother, or it just brings the whole family apart. And not only that, they will also even have a stigma also being known as this family. People will even avoid that family because you don't want to be part of this family. So, like in the evening, we talk of the village, say, now the sun is setting, we don't want to come out of this family. People are even scared of that. Even the members within the family, none of them is safe. They don't feel safe because of that violence which is there. It's even worse for the community. It comes also with the effects of disorder, and not only disorder, the issue of being traumatized, but it also becomes very expensive in the sense of as a community. Like for instance today, when you talk of the Ministry of Health, they have got different structures in place which are very expensive. They even create psychiatric wards, they create things because of because of those pain, but they are even the government itself in terms of they have to build prisons to keep people who are breaking the law, the criminals. It's quite expensive to maintain. I'm talking of a community here. I'm not talking of the village. I'm talking of the country as a community as well. Yeah, for a country to sustain people who are the inmates, it's quite expensive for the country, very expensive. Not only that, when the person is brought back now, letting up the ordinary community, it's also very expensive because people are not safe. Even if the person has repented, has changed his mind, the mere presence of this person brings a discomfort in the community. Then the other part of the community, I'm talking of the effect of this, it will be the issue of them trying to contain and live with this person, to create a space for this person. So I've just said in short that it has effect on all three levels. To the individual, it's pure straightforward stress and all these traumatic effects. To the family, are the interpersonal relationship, and to the community as large.
Okay, okay. And what do you think are the root causes of violence in our community?
From the first part of our discussion, I mentioned is the absence of self-esteem, is the absence of self-assertiveness. Look at this, look at it from this perspective. Imagine if everybody was having a positive self-esteem. You value yourself, you value the other person. There will be no need of us having this problem. But now the problem comes when for instance, let me give you an example. When I've got a low self-esteem, I develop a negative picture of myself. And because of that, I look myself like I'm already a victim. So what do when I see people? I try to create a psychological to protect myself, and in the process I become violent. Yeah. Let me just give a very simple example. Because of low self-esteem, maybe you're just walking passing by, and you find people laughing. There are only things. You people stand around. Why are you laughing at me? Eh? Maybe you're carrying a gun. Pa, pa. You're laughing at me. It has nothing to do with you. Or maybe a gun is too much, I've just taken it far. Maybe just beat them one, pa, 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 pa. You leave them crying, and then they open a case, and maybe people sit down. You'll be so surprised to learn that actually they were not even aware that you were around. But because you have got a low self-esteem, you believe whatever people are saying, they are gossiping about me. You hate this negative thing about you. So that could be, for me, one of the root causes. And which comes together with the issue of a lack of assertiveness. Because you are not able to stand up for your own rights, for your own wishes, whatever, to express them correctly, you allow other people to come in your space. And when they come in your space, what they do, they take advantage of your life. They are starting to abusing you mentally, physically. So for me, I can give many explanations, but I would rather stick to this two. Those are the roots. It's the absence of a positive self-esteem, it's the absence of being assertiveness. These two behaviors, when they are not in someone, you are most likely to become a victim of violence, whether as a victim, as a perpetrator, or as a victim of violence. Either way, you are not safe.
Good. I just want to revert back or use the previous question as a reference to what I'm going to say. When we're looking at the effects of violence to the individual, to the family, as well as to the community, now paying a bit more attention to the individual. You gave an example of a child in a family setup, for example, and how violence that happens in a family affects the child. So this is a clear indication that illustrates to us that a child who grows up in a household where there is violence, they have a high possibility of not being assertive. They have a very high possibility of not being aware of who they really are. And the lack of such awareness is what contributes to them also wanting to inflict violence onto the next person, because this is basically what they have been socialized to.
There's another part which I could have added on the other causes. You remember I said I will stick to those two, assertiveness and self-esteem. What I was supposed also to mention was that the absence of these two is exactly coming to the point you have just mentioned. It brings weakness in your mind, in someone's mind. It brings the absence of defense mechanism in your mind. You become vulnerable to everything. And that's why then people have got different ways of expressing them. They can be expressed in the form of violence, of frustrations. Someone is highly frustrated. If you go down the whole point, why is this person frustrated? He does not have the skills of what we call social skills. And social skills are the ones I was just talking about. By the way, these two things I've mentioned, they are skills. In other words, they can be developed. Yeah. If one was in an environment where the environment was not supportive in terms of him to develop his positive self-esteem, it can still be done. You can still expose that person to develop that, to move it from negative self-esteem to a positive self-esteem. The same thing for if the person was brought up in an environment where he was not assertive, that skill can still be developed. Yeah. And then once those ones are put together, then you are almost assured that no, yes, if I end up having a mental disorder, it's not because of this. It could be another. But remember, it can also come in another form on top of mental disorder. Maybe it can be an example of a brain injury, which comes from maybe an accident, whatever it is. But if it's something solid, or it can be something which you call biological, it's a genetical problem. But if it was not, if it comes because of what I've just talked of, depression, things like frustrations, things like the neglect of the parents, this can be avoided if people take time and try to. It can be avoided, it can be treated if people take time and invest in these whole things.
All right. Yeah. Okay, so what are your final words before we wrap up?
Yeah, in conclusion, let me appreciate that you gave me time to say these things, because we don't have platforms where, apart from where I teach. Yeah, students whom I teach, they hear this thing almost every day, but that's just only a fraction of the community. But now with this arrangement of me talking on media like this, I want to believe that this will reach many people who did not have the chances of having heard this for the first time. Also, I want to appreciate the sense that you are also from this a good initiative. I would want to encourage that you continue doing this. Not only this topic, we have to bring other things. The fabric of the society is having people like you who are positive-minded, who are self-esteem, who have got positive self-esteem. It comes with a price, because you have to take your time. You need to be self-disciplined to do this. But I want to conclude by saying, if we would continue to have such programs, we might not eliminate the whole problem, but this is a first step in the right direction. We are helping, you are helping people of your age, you are helping many people who are listening there. And I want to say thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It was a very interesting discussion that we have with you, and we would like to come back one time and come and have more discussions related to this.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine.
Thank you.